Hey guys, and welcome back to my CCNA 200-301 course. Patrice is here, and in this video we are going to review Syslog messages. Are you ready? Let's get started. First of all, what is Syslog and how we can benefit from it? Syslog is a standard logging protocol used by Cisco devices and also many others to record system events and messages. It helps monitor, troubleshoot, and audit device activity by sending logs to a central Syslog server or storing them temporarily in the device memory. Basically, iOS talks to admins through syslogs and let them know what is happening on the device, so admins can prevent disasters or investigate the issues. Now let's see where we can view the syslogs. The first location you can view the syslogs is via the console port. When you physically connect it to the device, logging on console is enabled by default. The next location is called monitor, which is when you use a remote terminal like Telnet or SSH. Third location is where you can keep the logs for longer period normally on a server that is called a Syslog server, and also a lot of security systems like Splunk can analyze these logs and identify possible threats as well, so it can be used as a security measure as well. And finally, buffer, which is the RAM of your device. And obviously, since this is a volatile memory, if your device reboots, all logs will be cleared. This is a typical Syslog message, and as a CCNA, you need to know how to interpret this message. I highlighted different parts of this message so you can identify them easier. The first part is the timestamp and shows when the event is actually happened. The next part is called facility, that shows the event is related to which components of the system, like link, line protocol, SNMP, SSH, sys, etc. Severity is a single-digit number that shows how important this event is. I'll talk about the different numbers in the next slide. Next part is called mnemonic, which is a text that uniquely describes the message. And finally, description, which shows the detailed information about the event. So based on this message, you can figure out at that time something has happened to Gigabit Ethernet 1/0, and that interface came back online. As I mentioned in the previous slide, severity is a single-digit number that shows how important the event is. This number is defined between 0 to 7. The lower the number, the more important it is. Different levels are emergency, alert, critical, error, warning, notification, informational, and debugging. And you can see the relevant numbers in front of each. The first two levels are very important and categorized as severe, which means they can stop the device from functioning and has to be addressed immediately. The next three levels are categorized as impactful, which means they impact the device, but not as immediate and severe as the first two ones. Notification and informational are categorized as normal severity and will not impact the device function as such. And debugging level will be used when run debug commands and you want to check what is happening with a specific part of the system, normally for troubleshooting. You can determine the level of logging based on the locations I mentioned in the previous slide. The important thing you need to know is when you configure a certain level, for example, notification, it means notification and all previous levels, all the way up to emergency. So you don't have to configure individual levels. This is our today's scenario, which has been implemented in GNS3. As you can see, we have two routers to be able to generate some alerts or events actually. And router 1 has a connectivity to my personal computer, and I'm running an application called Kiwi Syslog server on my computer. So you can see actually how you can, this is the Kiwi Syslog server, and I'll show you how you can send your Syslog messages to a Syslog server like this. I want to start with the show command that gives us a lot of good information. The command we're using to see the status of our logging, or basically syslog, is show logging. As you can see here, the important information I want to talk about is different logging levels for different logging views. We just spoke about it. So for console logging on this device, the logging level is debugging. So it means all 8 levels will be logged within the console. And for monitor logging also, the logging level is debugging. And also for buffer logging, the logging level is debugging. But as you can see, for trap logging, which is the Syslog server, is actually the logging level is informational. These all three are in the same level, but it is not necessarily like this. So you can define different levels of logging for each of these categories. The other thing I want to show you is here, and the size of your buffer. So if you want to save your logs in your RAM, in your device RAM, then this is the size that has been defined by default, but you can change it, and it depends on the capacity of the RAM of your device. And also the events that are currently in your buffer. So these are the events that you can see what's going on in your device and what has happened actually on your device. So these are the logs that you can also have a look with show logging command. The next set of commands I want to talk about are controlling the behavior of each of these views. You can enable or disable logging, different logging views, those 4 things we spoke about. Monitor, console, buffered, and trap. Or you can define certain level of logging for each of these levels or views. To do that, we go to global configuration mode, and our keyword is logging. And for each of these different views, we have a separate keyword. So for console, it is logging console. For terminal, it's logging monitor. And for buffer or on the RAM, it is logging buffered. And for syslog configuration, it is logging trap. So logging console, logging monitor, logging buffered, and logging trap. So if you run these commands individually without any other parameters, you actually enable them if they have already been disabled. So if someone disabled these loggings, and you can see them via show logging, if any of these have been disabled, and then you can enable them again with running these commands. Logging console, logging monitor, logging buffered, or logging trap. Or on the other hand, if for example you have logged in through the console, but you don't want to see the messy messages on your console while you're working or troubleshooting or configuring the device via the console. So for example, here we say no logging console, and this will disable logging on the console. So now if I run show logging, you can see that console logging is disabled. And if again I enable the logging via logging console and do show logging, you can see that logging console is enabled again. And similar commands for configuring certain level of logging on each of these. So for console, for example, we say logging console, and then here we can either say the number, I mean the severity level based on the numbers you just saw in the slide, or you can use the keywords like emergencies, and you have the help here. Severity level is 0 for emergencies. Errors, informational, notification, warnings, alerts, critical. So you have all of those 8 levels, which you can use the numbers, or you can use the keywords. So for example, you remember we just saw that the logging level for console was a debugging level, which was the last one. But we can just say that logging console 5. And if I run show logging again, you can see that this has been changed to notifications, while others remained on the certain levels they already been configured. So each of these views can be configured separately. Logging monitor has a special consideration that we spoke about it before, but just to reiterate, logging monitor will be enabling actually logging for remote sessions, but it doesn't mean it will show you the relevant events when you're logging through Telnet or SSH. And to be able to see the logs that are happening when you are connecting through Telnet or SSH, you have to run this command as well, which is terminal monitor. So you want to see the event logs when you have been connected through Telnet or SSH. So this command will enable the logging for remote sessions, but to be able to see the events, you have to run this command as well. Now I want to show you how you can add an extra information to your syslogs, and that extra information is a sequence number. To be able to add a sequence number at the beginning of your alert or events, we go to global configuration mode and we say service sequence numbers, and this will add an extra item at the beginning of your events, and that is your sequence number. So if I have a look at the logging again, you can see that now I have a sequence number here as well. But before that, it was just a timestamp, and now from now on, I have the service sequence number as well. So sequence number and then the timestamp. If for whatever reason, if you want to remove the timestamp, which doesn't make sense to me, but there is an option to do that. Anyway, for whatever reason, if you need to remove the timestamp and just use the sequence number, you can use, or even don't have the sequence number either. So to remove the timestamp, you can run no service timestamps, and this will remove the timestamp from your syslog messages. And from that moment on, you can see that you don't have the timestamp anymore. So it's just about the sequence number because we have configured. If we remove the sequence number as well, if I say no service sequence number, then you remove both sequence number and timestamp, which doesn't make sense because time especially is a very important thing for us. But anyway, you can do that. And as you can see here now, I don't have either the timestamp nor the sequence number. If you need to clear the logs from your device, you run clear logging, and this asks you, are you sure you want to clear logging buffer? And you confirm it, and this will delete your logs on the device. And as you can see, we don't have any logs for now. Last but not least, how you can send your syslog messages to a central syslog server. If I run show logging once again and focus on the traps, you can see that the level is informational, but other information are empty because we haven't configured where to send our syslog messages to a syslog server. So to do that, we are going to global configuration mode and we say logging host, and then you can use the host name or you can use the IP address of your device. For me, If you have DNS configured, you can use the hostname, and if not, you can just use the IP address, or as you can see, you can use the IP version 6 as well. So I say 192.168.1.210, and here, if you're using the VRFs, you can use a specific VRF as well. By default, Syslog messages using UDP port 514. But if for whatever reason you want to change that port, or your Syslog server is listening to another port, you can use the transport keyword. And in transport, you can mention either you want to use TCP or UDP. If it is just UDP another port, you say UDP and then the port number. And or if you're using TCP for your syslogs, you say TCP and then the port number, and you mention the port numbers. Since I'm using the default UDP port on my machine, I just say logging host 192.168.1.20. So if I go to my Syslog server now and bring it here, I'm expecting if anything happens on my machine, I mean on my router, I should be able to see something here. So first, let's run show logging again. And so you can see some information here about the trap. So you can see that logging to 192.168.210, you're using port 515 and 2 messages lines logged. So if I go here now, I should be able to see some logs. You can see that this log is here. And to trigger some stuff, I go to like interface gigabit ethernet 0/1. I shut it down and bring it back up. So there should be some logs here now. And as you can see, this is here, and this will remain on this server based on your Syslog server configuration, how long you want to retain your logs, and etc. Alright guys, this was our today's video. In this video, we covered 4.5 exam topic, described the use of Syslog features, including facilities and severity levels. And in the upcoming video, I'll be talking about access control lists basics. I wish you enjoyed today's video and see you in the next ones.